Hey, what's up, everybody? So I'm coming to you today with the Champions Report on the WBC Championship. So this will discuss all the title belts from 122 pounds to heavyweight, all the champions, and what they got coming up and what they got going on. The WBC belt, if you don't know, is the green title. That belt been under a lot of scrutiny for how corrupt the World Boxing Council has become. And I agree with it. There's been a lot of it. They don't make their mandatories fight. They change their mandatories around a lot. What they've done, though, is they really have put positioning the best fighters to become world champions, which I like. I mean, that's a good thing. It's just they're breaking all their rules to be able to do that. And they've also went the WBA area where... And, the WBA has a super champion and a regular champion. Well, the WBC, for special circumstances, is declaring franchise champions, which I don't mind, though, as long as they keep it a rare thing. Because, like, Canelo became the franchise champion, which is what allowed him to fight for the vacant title against Callum Smith. He's a better fighter. Avni Yildirim, the guy he's going to fight, had no business fight and still doesn't. Fighting for this title after 2 years off. But he's the mandatory challenger. The right guy is the champion in Canelo, and they're going to fight. Well, they also did it for Vasily Lomachenko for the fight with Lopez because Devin Haney, here's what happened. Lomachenko became the WBC champion, and he had 2 other world titles. Devin Haney was his mandatory challenger for beating nobody. He did not beat anybody to deserve that distinction. Actually, he was the interim champion by beating nobody. So the WBC, their plan backfired, naming him interim champion because Lomachenko wanted to fight Lopez for all 4 major belts, but the WBC followed their rules. Lomachenko didn't say he was going to fight Haney. He got stripped. Or they named him franchise champion, which didn't mean shit at the moment. And then Devin Haney was upgraded, and he hadn't beaten anybody. So when the unification bout for the undisputed came about between Lopez and Lomachenko, the WBC scrambled because they were technically not going to be a part of it, and they decided to say, we all know Lomachenko's the real champion, so the franchise belt is going to be considered part of the undisputed, which it should be. So, again, I don't like that they're breaking their rules to go make things right, but they are doing it. So it's kind of pick your poison kind of deal. The controversy is leading to the right thing. They're just doing it, going about it, breaking all the rules, going the wrong way. So it kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And the way I look at it, as long as it's the best fighters as the world champions, then I'll take it, I guess. But I still don't like the corruption. WBC, the green belt, the most recognizable belt, and it's the second oldest organization next to the WBA, so you would figure those 2 ones would be the least corrupt, but they're both the most corrupt. So it is what it is. But again, guys, after that, I hope you guys enjoy my videos. I really do. Leave me some love, thumbs up, thumbs down, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate it. Let's jump into all the champions from 122 to heavyweight and see what's going down in each division real quick. Just a quick run through. Let's start at 122. Champion there is the undefeated Luis Nery. He captured the vacant belt back in September, beating little-known undefeated Aaron Alameda. That was on a major card. He's part of the PBC. He's now a 2-division world champion with that win. He was supposed to fight Ray Vargas at some point this year, but Vargas decided to move to 126. So right now it's up in the air. I'm still leaning towards Nery's probably going to fight Daniel Roman, the former unified champ. They're both at the PBC. This is a good next step opponent for Nery if he's a legitimate fighter at 122. And it's a great option for Roman. And their last fights were both on the same card. So these guys should be coming back now. I don't think Stephen Fulton, after just fighting in January, is an option for Luis Nery. Or Brandon Figueroa fought on the same card, but he's not. He's the secondary champion of the WBA. Does he want to unify again with a belt that is considered a secondary belt? I don't think so. So I think Daniel Roman's the perfect next step. I think it's what he should do. We should be hearing something very soon. Hopefully by the next Champions Report, we know what Luis Nery's doing next. 126, the champion there, is the current longest reigning champion in boxing and the WBC right now, and that's Gary Russell Jr. He's been champion since March of 2015. He's creeping up on 6 years. Right now, it looks like Gary Russell, and I think it's almost for sure, is going to be facing former 122-pound champion, the undefeated Ray Vargas. I think they'll probably get that fight going for May or June in that area. I think it's a great matchup right there between Russell and Vargas. Surprisingly, Vargas will have been out of the ring longer than Russell. Usually that's not the case since Russell only fights once a year. But I think on paper and stylistically, this might be one of the tougher challenges of Russell's career because Vargas throws a lot of punches, and he also can box as well, and he can take shots. I think it's an interesting matchup, so hopefully that fight's finalized and good to go by the next championship report, and I think it will be. 130, the WBC champion is Miguel Berchelt, and his moment to shine is here. This Saturday, February 20th, he is going to make a mandatory defense of his title against the undefeated former featherweight champion, Oscar Valdez. This is one of the most looked forward to fights of this year so far, him and Valdez. I think Berchelt, he's been champion for 4 years now, since January of 2017. He's dominated this division. I think this is going to be he's finally fighting a younger fighter who is undefeated on the rise, as opposed to the veterans that he's been laying out and knocking out. Now he gets a chance to prove against this guy that he's the real deal and the best at 130. He trades back and forth with Gervonta Davis for number one, and a win here, a decisive win especially, is going to cement him at number one, and I think he's going to get it. I got him knocking Valdez out between the 6th and 9th rounds and retaining his WBC belt. I'm not counting Valdez out, but I don't think he can hang with Berchelt. So we'll see what happens. February 20th, ESPN in the main event. 135, the current champion right now, lightweight, is, well, there's two. It's one of those franchise situations. You got the franchise and undisputed champion, Teofimo Lopez, and you got the regular champion, Devin Haney. In either case, Lopez will be defending all 4 major belts that he has, almost for sure against George Kambosos Jr., his IBF mandatory challenger. That's likely taking place in New York in the springtime. Hasn't been finalized yet, but it looks like that's what's going to happen. And then Devin Haney, the regular championship, looks to be defending that. I think it's going to be against either Javier Fortuna or Jorge Linares next. I'm leaning towards Fortuna. The WBC has ordered him to fight Ryan Garcia, the interim champion. I think Garcia is still considering that bout, but likely not going to go forward with it. And then Haney's going to fight Fortuna or Linares. That's both his biggest fights of his career, and I'm hoping by the next champions report, one of those fights is finalized and good to go between either Ryan Garcia, Javier Fortuna, or Jorge Linares. I will take any one of those 3 for Haney, because Haney needs to beat a guy, a legitimate lightweight in the top 5, top 10, to get himself into the top 10, because he's not in mine. I don't think he deserves to be in anybody's. Okay, the next WBC champion is at 140 pounds, junior welterweight, and that is undefeated unified champion Jose Ramirez, who also holds the WBO belt. Jose Ramirez, May 22nd on ESPN in the main event. It hasn't been finalized, but it looks like it's almost for sure going to happen. He will try to become only the 6th man in the 4-belt era in the last 30 years of declaring undisputed champions with the 4 major world titles. He will become only the 6th man. He has the opportunity to become only the 6th man to do that. He is almost for sure going to be facing the undefeated fellow unified champion from Scotland, Josh Taylor, who holds the IBF and WBA super belts. And that fight, these 2 guys are on a collision course. Everything's been agreed upon. It looks like they're just finalizing the details. May 22nd, ESPN, undisputed title. That's big for Jose Ramirez. He's from Fresno, California, only about an hour away from me. That's huge in my area. Ramirez is a good, solid fighter, and I'm hoping by the next champions report we should have that fight finalized and ready to happen May 22nd on ESPN. We'll keep you posted. 147, the WBC champion is the undefeated Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence, he's a unified champ. He also holds the IBF title. He made it very clear when the WBA upgraded Yordenis Ugas to their super champion that he wants, it's strap season is what he said. He wants to unify belts. I think Errol Spence is leaning towards fighting Yordenis Ugas next to gain control of 3 of the 4 major world titles. When Terrence Crawford, when that fight becomes possible, he holds a 4th major belt. If he has 3 of them, that gives him even more of a bargaining chip for more money in that fight, and to make that fight possible. So, Spence is smart. I think Ugas is a good challenge. Even though I'd rather see him fight Sean Porter next, there's a lot of people that argue that Ugas beat Sean Porter when they fought in March of 2019, and I'm not going to argue that. That was a close fight. Ugas has a tricky style, and I think it's a good opponent for Errol Spence to try to lock up that 3rd belt. I'm hoping by the next Champions Report that we know if he's going to fight him or possibly Porter or somebody else, but I hope it's somebody big. I actually would rather have him fight Ugas to unify belts next as opposed to a rematch with Porter. But I'll take either one of those because I really do believe that Porter deserves a rematch with Spence, so we'll see. Okay, at 154 pounds, the WBC champion there is Jermell Charlo, the unified champ. Charlo holds the WBA Super and the IBF World titles as well. He unified those belts when he knocked out Jason Rosario back in September on pay-per-view. Now, Charlo, in the WBC situation that he has a mandatory due against Erickson Lubin, which would be a rematch from their fight in 2017 when Charlo knocked Lubin out, caught him cold in the first round, knocked him out, handing him his only loss. Lubin's come back, become the mandatory. I'm not sure how the WBC is going to handle this situation. Now that Brian Castano has become the WBO champion, undisputed it could be there for these 2 fighters, but I think the WBC is going to figure out a way to make this fight happen with Jermell Charlo not having to make his mandatory against Lubin. I think either they're going to upgrade Charlo to franchise champion like they did for Lomachenko and Lopez that happened, or I think they can just work out a deal with Lubin to where Lubin's guaranteed a shot at the winner of Charlo and Castano. But I think one way or the other, they're going to avoid that. I'm hoping Charlo decides to fight one more time prior to that. He hasn't fought since September. It's been 5 months. I'd like to see him come back in the next couple months, and then him and Castano fight for undisputed later in the year. But I'm not sure what's going to happen. We haven't heard anything. I'm hoping by the next Champions Report, we got some news on what Jermell Charlo's doing. 160, the champion is the undefeated Jermall Charlo for the WBC title. Now Jermall Charlo hasn't fought since September, since he scored his career biggest win, dominating Sergey Derevyanchenko over 12 rounds to retain his world title. Now there's a lot of talk, about what is he going to do next. I think the popular pick in the first half of the year would be for Charlo to fight, Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's waiting around to see what Triple G and what Jaime Munguia are going to do. And then once they fall into place, I'm hoping he takes on Chris Eubank, because if Charlo can beat Chris Eubank after beating Derevyanchenko and the way he talks trash, I think the fight with Canelo is really fucking possible for 168 in December. I think that's possible. Even if he were to agree with Eubank to move up to 168 to make that fight happen, that'd be cool. But obviously, I'd rather it be for Charlo's middleweight title. And I think Eubank would prefer that because Eubank has never been a world champion. But I'm hoping Charlo sets himself up in position to move up and fight Canelo at 168. But I just want to see him fight somebody good next and capitalize on that win he had over Derevyanchenko. So we'll see. Hopefully by the next Champions Report, we know what Charlo's doing. 168, the champion is Canelo. He just won the vacant belt. He's a unified champ. He holds the WBC and WBA super belts. We know what Canelo's doing next. Canelo's making his WBC mandatory so he can hold on to the green belt at the end of this month, February 27th on DAZN. I think he's going to knock out Avni Yildirim and keep his unified titles. Then he's going to attempt to unify belts against Billy Joe Saunders in May. I think he'll win there. And then he's going to go and try to become a 4-belt champion and undisputed in September against the undefeated IBF champion, Caleb Plant. Now, if all that pans out, and he doesn't get hurt or lose, he actually wants to fight a 4th time in December. And I think Jermall Charlo coming up from 160 or a 3rd fight with Triple G is definitely possible. So Canelo got his work cut out for him. Next fight, February 27th on DAZN in the main event. Pay attention to that. Okay, next. 175. The champion at light heavyweight is currently the undefeated unified champ, Arthur Beterbiev. He holds the WBC and the IBF titles, and it looks like he's going to be, he's returning March 20th on ESPN against optional opponent Adam Dienz. Now, we don't know what he's going to do the remainder of the year. He's fighting Dienz then, and we just don't know if he's coming back later on or not. Well, we know he's going to want to come back, but we know now he's not going to have to fight Gilberto Ramirez because Ramirez passed on the mandatory title fight, a mandatory number 1 contenders bout with Marcus Brown. So Ramirez, he's probably gonna have to wait around for his WBC mandatory. I think he's gonna fight Dienz and then make his IBF mandatory against Manlong Feng from China and settle those, and then he might fight one more time before the end of the year. He wants Dimitri Bivol in a unification bout. Joe Smith might be sitting there with the WBO title. It's kind of up in the air. But March 20th, next, unified champion, Beterbiev versus Dienz. And then 200, cruiserweight. Current champion is Ilunga Makabu. Makabu just made a successful first defense against Duradola, not a 7th round KO in an all-action fight. Makabu has 2 mandatories due now. We just don't know what order they're going to be in. They're going to be against Tabishu Mishunu, and which would both be rematches against Mishunu, who he knocked out a few years ago, and against Alexei Papin, who he narrowly beat in August of 2019 by a majority decision. So he's going to have to fight them. I think he's going to fight Mishunu and then Papin in that order. I would favor him to win both fights, but Papin is the real deal. I think he's going to beat Mishunu, but Papin's the real deal, and I think Papin could upset him, but I really want to see that rematch, so we'll see what happens. I hope by the next Champions Report we got at least the first mandatory settled and good to go. And then finally, our heavyweight title, Tyson Fury is probably going to fight Anthony Joshua. They are finalizing that fight. There's little things they're going back and forth over. Eddie Hearn says it's not a concern for him. He said he thinks that fight's going to get done in the next couple weeks. They're going to sign at least, and then we're going to know a date and hopefully a location right after that. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope Fury and Joshua work this out. But at the very least, by the next Champions Report, I hope we at least know if they're not fighting, what they're going to do. And if they are fighting, we know both fights that they're supposed to happen, because that's supposed to be the deal. 2 fights between them. So we'll see. That's the Champions Report on the WBC, guys, the green belt. Hope you guys enjoyed it. That's everything. True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.